That was a tough time. I can clearly remember it to this day.
Put my hands up like that.
Do something unethical to the business, but see a different side of the old bush boys.
That no one knows anything about it hardly. I was born in Anango. Then when I was 10-year-old, we went to Jindawi, and I went to school at Jindawi. Then I went to Toowoomba Grammar School for a couple of years. I wasn't a really brilliant student, but I loved sport, and I'd done pretty well in the cricket and rugby union, things like that. 16, 17, I started playing rugby league in Dalby for Dalby Colts. I got an offer to go to Toowoomba to play rugby league as a paid player with all whites. I represented Far North Queensland against the Englishmen once. Then I came back to Oakey as a paid player in Oakey for a couple of years. Then I went back to Jindawi into Ballon Forestry carting logs. And that's where I got tangled up into all the machinery, started my machinery life. When I was probably about 18, I'd go and have a few beers here and there on a Friday night or something, and I run into Marlene, and we've been together now 60 years. Her dad and mum were in a carting timber out in Ballon Forestry, had machinery, carting logs into a sawmill, and Marlene's father went away and he wanted to kind of semi-retire, and we took over his business.
Living out in Ballon Forestry, I think I was 6, 7 years old, and I don't know if you broached this with the old man about his broken leg and things like that. That was a tough time. I can clearly remember it to this day, that morning when that accident happened to the old boy, and he was out in the middle of nowhere, the log crushed across his legs.
I brought a load into the mill, and then to this day, I was bending over picking up a chain, and something told me to look up. And I looked up, and this log was coming down. It was about 4 ton of it. And I put my hands up like that. It hit me. I went backwards. The log went across my legs right here and smashed this one to bits. I was lucky if I didn't get up, I would have been dead. It would have put me 8 feet into the ground. But I spent 3 months in hospital, in traction, in Toowoomba. And Marlene's father and Marlene kept the business going for me.
I take the utmost respect for how that incident was handled, and how Mum and her dad at the time come out in the bush and helped continue the business, like carting logs at such a young age with your mother and your grandfather while your dad's in hospital in Toowoomba recuperating. That's first rule of thumb. And then the next thing stuck in my head is when he got out of hospital and he's got a cast on his leg, broke a leg, shattered, a log's fallen across him. Went back into Ballon Forestry and driving the truck around working with a cast on your leg. Like
6 weeks, I had a broken leg in cast, but I still drove it. We got there. And it's just something, you got to do what you got to do to make a living. A very hard life, very hard life. The reason I come to the Gold Coast in the first place, my son Scott, he come down here doing apprenticeship carpentry. Anyway, after about 2 or 3 months, he rang up to his mother and said, I'm coming home. I'm getting sentimental. Anyway, I said, no way in the world you're coming home to this. So we sold our business out there in the Ballon Forestry, the timber business. We come down here to the Gold Coast to make sure he'd done his apprenticeship. And when we rented a house at Robina. There was 11 of us in it, 11 mum had to feed and all that. Anyway, I bought a tip truck for weed feed soil, and I worked for Kevin Hargraves was his name, run a good business, and we're doing pretty well, you know. And but the worst part about it, when we first come down here, we started on the 1st of March, and it rained probably for 6 to 8 weeks. And we're making about $150 a week, but we got there. And Kevin Hargraves sold his business, weed-free soil, to a gentleman who had a newspaper. Run the newspaper brilliant, but didn't have a clue how to run a trucking business. So after about 12 months of him running the business, I said to Marlene, we might as well get out and have a go by ourselves. And if I'm going to go broke, I might as well do it through my stupidity. Started up TC Tippers was the name of the company. And we had another 2 truck drivers join me. We had about 3 or 4 subbies, and they seemed to want to give them all the bad jobs, and I wasn't a believer of that. I think any of the bad jobs, we should all share it around. So we split up, and that's when I started Coastal Tippers. And there was 2 trucks and a Bobcat.
Ross turned 80 early this year, and he's still here 5:30 every 4 days a week. If he works here, he's on board. Mum's similar age. A lot of people in our clients don't even know Mum exists in the background, but she's been there right from the start, obviously. And they're very, very well known for paying their bills on time. If there's an issue, dealing with it very, very quickly, and customer comes first and staff comes second, and basically we come third. The organisation's gone a long way in 30 years, and the most pleasing part for me when I first started on Bobcat myself, and Mum and Dad and the trucking in the office, and obviously the brothers and sisters all become involved in early doors, the scale of operation we've built into, and more importantly the way the business has been built, particularly with Ross and Marlene, with the integrity and the way they've continued to grow this and looked after their staff. The 3 main businesses, obviously Coastal Tippers, the transport arm, and the 2 recycling yards, which Quality Concrete Recycling and Gold Coast Recycling. So they complement the transport arm, and we became more commercially relaxed. That was our first point of call. And then obviously our next thing was all the communities, and some of the trophies there and some of the plaques you see are only small part of who we contribute to. So if you're luckily enough, we've worked hard to be successful, and you've got a few dollars spare, well, let's give it back to people in need. And in the last couple of years, I think you've seen as well that his investment in community organisations, the charities the old man's personally donated to, is getting quite substantial. And obviously we're doing things from a race club point of view and the men's health as well. So it's time to give back, and hopefully everyone else joins that conversation and becomes involved.
I see people out there now sleeping in tents and things like that. I just like to be in a position I am in to help people who need things, and I do it that no one knows anything about it hardly. And not out there for the glory, I'm out there to help people.
You asked me 4 or 5 years ago would I be buying Sidetrack trucks, I'd say $1 million to 1. So simple as this, it's relationships. The trucks are outstanding in my view, particularly price points, which are very, very important. We normally keep vehicles back the old days 3 to 4 years max. Nowadays might be 5 to 7 years. So you've got to have the reliability. And I put our first truck driver in the Sidetrack vehicle was one of the, I like to say, hardest taskmasters in our entire fleet. If there was ever going to be criticism, would have come from that bloke. And yeah, he's your biggest advocate, comfort, everything else. So, as you know, we've rolled a few more into the fleet now, and the drivers who go on those just talk to Terry, and yeah, they know. So that's why we took the punt. Got confidence in the people. Buying vehicles is the easy part. We bought 500, 600, 700 trucks, so I'd have no idea how many vehicles we bought over the years, probably more. So when you change a brand, you don't do it lightly, and you got to have the back support when you purchase things to be looked after. And I'm very, very confident that City Fleet particular will support the Sidetrack brand. What I've seen so far, the drivers are very happy, and so are we.